Welcome to the Organic Wine Podcast. Hello, this is Adam Huss coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Thanks so much for listening. The sponsor for this and all episodes so far is Centralis Wine. Centralis is an ecological winery that I started to protect or benefit the environment and my community with every business or winemaking decision. I envision a wine world in which humans are the students and servants of the non-human world, regenerating and protecting the vitality of ecosystems and promoting the diversity of life through wines that uniquely and deliciously reflect local abundance. Centralis wines feature foraged prickly pears, urban perennial polyculture wine garden produced grapes, gleanings from urban fruit trees, grapes from dry farmed century-old vines, and organic and biodynamic viticulture. If this sounds interesting to you, join our email list and learn more at centraliswine.com. That's CENTRALAS wine.com. My guest for this episode is Tim Graham of Left Bank Cider in Catskill, New York. On the bank of the Hudson River, Tim's cider project is a joint effort with his wife Anna Rosencranz and partner Dave Snyder. The three of them are making local cider from local apples, both wild and cultivated, and serving them at their local bar, along with other local ciders, beers, wines, and liquors of New York. It was such a delight to get to know Tim and what he's doing. He's thoughtful and smart, ecologically minded in his approach to every aspect of what he does, and he's curious and deeply appreciative of the beauty of his world. He drops insights and illuminating perspectives throughout this interview. And we go deep on the magic of fungus and its importance to the growing and making of fermented beverages. Tim also takes us on a journey of discovering wild apples and makes an argument for why his local apples are some of the best apples in the world. And we learn from Tim how to incorporate a process of learning and expanding and growing so that we waste none of the delicious fruits of life. Enjoy. Hey, Tim.
Hey.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks. Very excited to be
Thank
here.
you for doing this. Really, I like, as I was just saying, I have a lot of empathy for my interviewees and the the task that you have of talking about yourself is a lot more difficult than it seems from the outside.
Yeah.
But I would love you to talk about yourself, and I'm grateful that you're willing to. And I wondered if you want to jump in and talk about who you are and what you do. And where you are.
Yeah, that's a good start. My name is Tim Graham, and I am part of Left Bank Ciders, and we're three people, really. My wife, Anna Rosencranz, and my partner, Dave Snyder. We all work on it together. It's a really good group to...
Can I just say Rosencranz and Snyder sound like apples somehow?
I've never come across... Well, there are something like 10,000 named varieties, so it's
Right.
quite possible that they're like deep in the old archive somewhere.
It could just be that I grew up in that neck of the woods and there were like Snyder orchards and Rosencranz, cideries or things like that harken back to my childhood. I have
That makes
no idea.
sense. Yeah.
Anyway,
If there's not an apple named after them yet, maybe we can make
right.
it happen.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear more about that. But yeah, so please go on. Sorry.
Part of what we do is we are trying to come up with new varieties for cider specifically, and it like naming them is, I don't know, it's like a sport. Some people are really good at it, and I am really terrible at it. We always give them these kind of like, well, I didn't know they were coded locational names, but stuff that when I look back on it, it's like only I could understand it. Like, we named this apple DEC Pip, and it sounds like December Pippin, but it's actually like DEC is Department of Energy Conservation Land in New York State. So that means like it's a accessible, like open land. So yeah, anyway, naming apples. We'll name some apples after them, and then they'll get their due.
Well, great. And where are you?
We're in the village of Catskill. So we're, and when I say in the village, I mean like we're really in the village. We're just off Main Street, and that's where we have our cellar and our tasting room, and kind of do everything from that location.
And your tasting room is more than just a tasting room, is that right? Or is it just a tasting room?
Well, we think of it as the bar, is what we call it, and it is a New York State-based bar. So what I mean by that is when you get a manufacturing license in New York State, if you're under the farm certification system, so that would be like farm winery, farm cidery, farm brewery. You also get with that the privilege to serve other New York State farm beverages. So that means that we can serve New York State beers, wines, spirits. So we take advantage of that and have a pretty full bar. And the only things that we
Nice.
really don't make are margaritas and rum drinks. So it's great to
Things
have all that stuff.
things that don't grow well in cold winter climate
Right. There's not
areas.
really a good bulk sugar source in New York State.
Mm,
Yeah.
right.
I mean,
Uh,
other than
other than like corn or beets or something like that, I imagine.
right. I think actually, now that I think about it, what I mean to say is legally you can't call anything rum unless it's made with cane sugar. So there's
Got it.
no New York State rum, technically speaking.
Got it.
But there's like rum by another name. Yeah.
Interesting.
Right.
Has anybody tried? I mean, like, so I have sugarcane growing here at Crenshaw Crew,
Oh,
and
cool. Nice.
it seems like a weed. Like, I can't imagine it not growing almost anywhere. I mean, maybe I have no idea, but it's just seems to thrive on neglect. Now, I mean, obviously this is California, so
Right.
we do have mild winters, but
Yeah,
um,
I don't know. I don't know about it. I mean, all I know about it is that it's like a tropical, warm climate.
yeah, yeah, that I guess so. I guess other people would have tried it, right? At this point.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a value thing. I mean, I was just finishing that book that you were recommending, The Half Has Never Been Told, actually, and I'm just
Mm.
the chapter on they're trying to like annex Cuba. So it's funny that you brought that up because I'm like reading all about sugarcane right now, and
Oh wow.
I'm glad they never brought it to New York because that's not good.
Yeah, well, the farming of it is horrible. I mean, yeah, I will just say from working with it tiny amounts, I cannot imagine like what it would have been to have been an enslaved person who had to work with it daily. Like the leaves are like knife blades. Like they just slice into you.
Yeah.
Like serrated knives. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Very dark.
A- Anyway, yeah, yeah. So all right, how did you end up where you are doing all this? And like, yeah, where did you guys come from?
Well, like deep, Dave and I kind of consider ourselves West Coast transplants. He's from Seattle and I'm from Colorado originally, and we met in Chicago. And then we all kind of ended up in New York City together again later. And like around that time, Anne and I were working on a lot of fermentation experiments, and we were working at the farmers market together. And I can tell that story of cider through that lens. But Dave came to the city to farm for a restaurant that was doing like a kind of farm to table thing.
Hmm.
So we reconnected, and I was helping him on the farm and volunteering and growing oyster mushrooms for the restaurant. And that was about the same time I was like getting serious about the idea of the cidery. So we all kind of left the city together to Catskill to do this project when the cellar space came up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. What was, I mean, were you okay, so first of all, oyster mushrooms.
Yeah.
Do you have a fungal bent in your body there?
Oh man, that is my favorite. I mean, if it's a hobby, it's like an extreme hobby. It's like my favorite pastime. I'll just read like mushroom identification books, like novels, just kind of page by page. Like, yeah. Anna got me into the New York Mycological Society, and
Oh, fantastic.
it really was the only thing I liked doing in the city. It like kept me in it for years. It's the only part of the city that I miss is actually the club, because they were just such an amazing group of people, and They do walks every single weekend. If you live anywhere within any amount of distance to New York City, you should definitely join, because and it has so much crossover with winemaking and cider and all that, like, um
Yeah. I mean,
obviously.
yeah, go on. I mean, please say finish that thought.
Well,
I
they
can't agree
start they
more.
I mean, people think of mushrooms as, like, I can't remember how they talk about it, like, the macrophagia, I think, is, the large fruit bodies, but in the
Uh-huh.
winter, they started going out and, like, collecting sticks, and now they're really into the, like, rust funguses and all this stuff that you really can hardly even see without, like, a loupe and some, assistance for the eye. And that obviously translates almost like directly into like rust funguses and mildews and all your vine and tree kind of fungal issues. So um
Right.
that gave me like some kind of small background to just have some understanding of that, which is really good.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's yeast is a fungus, right?
Yeast is a
So I mean,
Yeah,
like,
we were gonna say that on a label. Yeast is a fungus. Let's just say
so
it.
it's like, yeah, so you have to like, I mean, there is this thing. I mean, it's another good reason to, I think, work with fruit that grows well without fungicide,
Right,
because
right, yeah.
like you want a healthy population of, fungus on the skins of the fruit so that you can have a beautiful, healthy, and, sort of unique fermentation, that fingerprint of that area of that fruit, of that, that culture, the local ecosystem.
Right. My
But if your plant gets destroyed by by having a pro-fungal environment, then you're in trouble. Yeah, sorry,
No,
go ahead.
my, like, kind of, like, deep secret long-term dream is to, and people are doing this, is to come up with fungal sprays for trees that somehow can dominate, like, the, uh, other funguses, or maybe, like, coat the
Mm.
leaves enough to not give them a foothold or something like that. I mean, the things
I
they do
think
with
there's
fungus are amazing, like, there was a product that we were looking at recently. I think it was called Scottzyme KS, and KS in there was stands for kitchen sink, and it was like a pectin kind of thing for like uh, it's not a fining thing because it isn't like dropping out to the bottom, but it's breaking pectin bonds and something. And
yeah.
it's just basically, and I don't know how to say this, like, correctly, but, Aspergillus, I think?
Yeah,
Uh,
Aspergillus niger,
Niger,
yeah.
yeah, the black mold, so it's just a metabolite of black mold, and it's like, well, that's the most common it's the most common
Int
thing there is, it's, like,
Right, right.
amazing.
That's black rot, right? That's a big
Yeah,
bad thing in the vineyard, in grapes, at least.
just and
But
just
there,
a slight twist, and it's amazing, yeah.
I mean, this is, again, we're just going geeky on fungus here, which we'll come
Good,
back
yes,
to
good.
left
No,
bank,
love
but I mean, they're using, so the chitin of Aspergillus as well, and chitin is like the cell structure rather than whatever, it's like it's the same thing that's in like shellfish or whatever. It's that sort of hard,
right, yes.
thing that, isn't easily digestible, and has its own unique properties. They've actually created products now to remove, like, VA from wine,
No
as well
way.
as Brettanomyces taint
Oh,
from wine.
really? Oh, I need
Yeah,
I
so
need
it's
I need that,
there's
I need that.
yeah, there's a there's a I think it's called Bacillus is one of them, and that'll
Oh,
sort
I've
of get
I've actually heard of that, and I was asking somebody about it recently, kind of, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it sounds. I mean, it's sort of like a fining agent in that sense. So I think you
right,
just add like this chitin product, and then rack it off it, and it sucks out, the VAA taint. It sucks out the Brett taint. Now I haven't worked with it. I can't recommend it, but I'm just
right,
fascinated that, we're finding this thing that is one of the banes of existence to viticulture. Like the black rot
right.
is now providing, winemaking assistance as well, because of, this is just how crazy fungus are.
Yeah, and, now
Yeah.
that we're talking about that, I wasn't, like, planning on this, but it does make a very interesting, question, like, what it if now you're not now you're not doing natural wine. You're adding something and you're
Right.
doing this, and it's
Right.
like, well, what if I made it myself? or
Right. Right.
or
Right.
what if I had a cellar full of mold or something like that, and it's like, that's like, it's
Yeah.
amazing and interesting that you can take black mold and turn it into something completely different. And I think that's really cool. And I'm really interested in that science. And,
Yeah.
I don't want to, we don't use any of that stuff. And I'm not interested in, like, we're, if you're not trying to, like, adulterate to make a flavor, like, you're not trying to hit a goal, but you're trying to just get some assistance with something, I think.
Yeah. I feel like protective work rather than, you know, ego work, I guess you would say, like protecting, I think what is there naturally is
Right.
one way of looking at it to me.
Yeah, it just seems like that's really cool, and I'm into that. And it's a slippery slope with, like, uh, trying to place your kind of product and brand into, like, natural wine because that's what you believe in, and that's where your fruit is, and you're getting all this amazing, like, not beyond organic stuff, but then, yeah, it's an interesting question that we think about a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, of course, fungus is the other thing I was thinking about. What I thought you were going to say about um, using fungus in the, up in the trees and stuff like that, or a dominant fungus to outcompete, I guess, the other ones was just, sort of like, for example, powdery mildew is our main thing here, and that you can just sort of like rip a leaf off that has powdery mildew and throw it into the ground and not feel like you're going to contaminate your vineyard by not removing that,
Right,
because
right,
it gets out competed in the soil by all the other bacteria and things in the soil. And so then I was like, well, what if we just brought that, the microbes of the rhizosphere up into the phyllosphere, and basically create compost teas that then get sprayed into the vineyard, and you're bringing all that soil competition up into the leaves where the powdery doesn't have that competition normally unless you spray it on there. And would that work with just compost teas
right.
to be powdery, or other things too? And maybe if you're just doing it, kitchen sink style, like I do it, where I'm just making compost tea from our compost and not doing it scientifically to find these specific competitors. It's maybe it's a crapshoot, but maybe there's a way of looking at that, scientifically, and trying to extract from the soil the things that are just natural competition, the natural biological competition for these fungus, that you literally are just, making teas from specific soil types, or specific way, in a specific way, to cultivate those competitors and then get them up into your trees and vines. I
Right,
don't know.
or,
Just throwing stuff
you
out
could,
there.
yeah, we could plate them and then,
Right.
make,
Yeah.
when I get more time, I'm gonna get back into it, yeah. I've seen oyster mushroom mycelium, like, dominate molds, all kinds of stuff. It's amazing,
Hmm.
incredible, resiliency, and I just
Fast growing.
fast growing, yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really want to have anything to do with living material, so I don't know what kind of
Right.
threats it would pose to, like, a healthy living tree, but we'd have to check.
Oh, good point. Yeah, good point. That's right. It's a decomposer, not a whatever,
Right.
not a killer.
It's not a path.
um,
I mean, it can be pathogenic, but it's mostly just decompositional. Yes.
hmm. All right. So clearly you have an interest in fungus.
Right.
And
Yeah.
is that where, but is that where this all started for you?
No, the interest in fungus came kind of after. I mean, it's obviously yeast is a fungus, so yeah, it's part of it. But it really, the Mycological Society, it's all kind of starts at the same time, but it's slightly after. So yeah, we were fermenting things, messing around, and then the real cider breakthrough came when Anna and I were collecting compost for the Grow NYC, one of the Grow NYC markets. And this big orchard right next to us would show up in the morning when we would get there really early and dump, like, a whole trash bin or two or whatever of, what looked to us like perfectly good apples. And we had been fermenting, like, over, like, surplus stuff that we had. Like we would have a CSA and they would give us like a huge bag of habaneros or some crazy thing, that you can't do anything with. So you just like make hot sauce and whatever.
Mm.
And really trying to manage food waste. We wanted to do something with the apples, so we just started collecting them and doing everything we could. And when it got overwhelming, we decided that we would give it a shot, try to make cider. And we would take home like 2 bushels Saturday, and then using a food processor and like pillowcases and t-shirts, we would we would grind them up, make them into like a sauce consistency, squeeze them through the t-shirt, strain it, and then if we worked like really hard all day, we would get like two gallons, 2 carboys. It was it
Right.
was amazing, yeah. But we
Yeah.
loved it, and it was really fun, and then soon the apartment is, like, just overflowing with carboys, and we're fermenting everything, um, and everything else just wasn't as fun as that, so that became our focus, and, we started looking for a way to, like, make that, real, make it like our life.
Mm. Nice. And were you trying? Did you have a dream of homesteading at some point? Were you going to be a farmer
Well,
with chickens and?
Dave came up to farm. So we're working at the farmers market. We're becoming friends with a lot of farmers. We're reading about permaculture, and I think kind of doing all the normal uh things that you do when you want to get out of the city, but you don't really know what to do,
Yeah.
searching. So we did a lot,
Gotcha.
we were doing the farmers market, and then I did a permaculture school for a couple weeks in Vermont. It was like a camp. It was like permaculture camp.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
what we learned, Anna thought that I was going to come back and we were going to like find the land and buy it and make the cabin or whatever, and the exact opposite happened. I was like, okay, we're not doing that. We're not doing that at all. Um
And why was that?
well,
What did you learn like that scared you off?
yeah, I mean, I think retrospectively it was good and like true and honest of them to kind of teach us, not like in a super direct way, but basically like if you don't have a lot of money or you don't have a lot of resources in terms of free labor, then this is like an extremely difficult, slow, laborious process that really like it needs a huge amount of energy inputs in the beginning, and that could be capital, like money, or
Right.
a massive amount of manual labor. And the people who are really successful usually have both, like a lot of capital and a lot of free labor. So if you're out there and you don't have land already, and you're kind of trying to it's not the 70s anymore. Land isn't cheap, it's hard to
Yeah.
just like go off into the woods and find a place. Maybe for people who have land and are trying to figure out what to do with it or the best way to use it, I'm sure it makes a lot of sense in certain contexts, and I'm not blasting the whole thing. But for somebody who has nothing, it's a pretty tough start. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So much of the economics of farming right now, like if you're trying to start, is well, I mean, it might not work. I mean,
Right.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
end of story.
There was
Like,
just an article in the New York Times about how farmers in the Hudson Valley are having a really hard time because there's a lot of programs to try to connect people with landowners, and a lot of very wealthy people from the city, especially due to the pandemic, bought land and homes in the valley, and they have this idea that they want to have farms, and then the reality, like they're like, can you kind of spread the sheep out like everywhere? I don't like them in the one spot, or like the grass is too high over here, or like they're thinking about farming like from a purely aesthetic position,
yes,
and
yeah,
it just really, like, obviously it's about land access, but it's also about trying to build the right relationship with people, and it can be extremely challenging.
yeah, yeah. That's Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, but you didn't go that route.
No,
Is the
no,
short story.
no, we
Uh,
kind of so after that experience and reading like every single book that there was on like the Back to the Land movement, starting with the Good Life, like the original, and kind of
hmm,
all of these really interesting memoirs and books about all these people, it just got darker and darker and darker. And we were just like, okay. So we decided to stay put and save as much money as possible. And kind of just feeling like when the right opportunity came up, we'd be ready, you know? So
yeah.
we just kept working and saving money and looking around and looking for stuff to do and going on mushroom hikes and farming with Dave and all this stuff. And then my friend, he purchased this building in the village of Catskill, and he was making this move. He was trying to get like all his friends to move to the area. He was living in Hudson at the time, and he brought us up there. And the the building was built in 1875. It was built in
Mm,
sections, but the front was built in 1875. And so it had this really, truly subterranean cellar that was like, if you can picture like a European cellar, you know, it was like totally underground, stone walls. And and even so, it was like dry and pretty clean overall. And amazingly, the floor, I mean, they did this for obvious reasons, but the floor has a pitch to it, so it like pitches 5 degrees towards the exit, so that's like some water drainage, so all these kinds of amazing things. And when
oh
we
wow, yeah.
visited the spot, it was 10 degrees outside. It was 10 degrees where the bar is now, because that was like where the door is, and in the cellar it was like 40 degrees.
Perfect.
Yeah. I was and that was like the moment. I was like, this is it. This is the spot, you know? This is like a perfect, and it looked, you know, nobody else, I don't know why anyone else would ever want to rent a space like that, but
Oh, that's a great discovery.
that was it. And I was like, okay, this is it. And, you know, because of the wackiness of the space and the amount of work it was going to take, he rented it to us for super cheap. And I started like commuting up there and working, and then going back to the city. And then we finally moved full time in, I don't know when, 2018, or maybe something like that.
Hmm.
And then when Dave wrapped up his farming job, he moved up there also, and we just went at it, and
Nice.
yeah, did it.
That's fantastic. So that's how you ended up there. Now, I think one of the interesting things about your story, from what I know of it, is just that, it's been a process. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
you didn't arrive at,
No,
at,
I have
at,
no background. Uh, I did go to Cornell Apple School. I guess I'm down to go to school again and again and again. Um, so I did a week long like cider training program. I can't remember what the technical name of it is now, but it was really interesting.
this was at Cornell,
This was at Cornell, yeah.
a cider training program.
Yeah. I'm
Huh.
sorry, I really should know what it's called, but
No, I mean, that's probably enough for us to do some searching and find out.
yeah, it's
Um,
very common. They have these things, and it's like they have these levels. So you do the introductory course, and then they have another one on lab work where you can just kind of learn all the like laboratory. It's like the more advanced one, and then I think
yeah,
they
sort of
have
like the wine chemistry
right, the
aspect of it.
chemistry
Like,
one. Yeah, yeah. We did some of that. But you know, it wasn't the overall focus of it, but it was kind of just that was part of it, but gosh, I don't know if I mean, if I did learn anything, I don't know if I use it.
right. I think that's, yeah, part of the reality.
It was
Um,
really, like, kind of how you think of Cornell is, like, do big things and get some big shit and put a lot of money and, effort into it, and I don't know.
right.
It was like
capital
filter,
intensive,
like that's
industrial scale kind of thing.
yeah, it was about how to make a very consistent product all of the time. That that's
Right.
kind of the clearest way you could say it, which is, important and that's good, but that's not the direction that we ended up going in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it important to you to
No,
be
it's
consistent?
totally not. It's
Okay.
totally not important.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, I don't wanna consistently suck or anything, but,
Right. Right. You wanna be only, consistent quality or
yeah.
good quality, but not necessarily consistency of flavor and right,
Yeah,
like
we wanna be
everything else.
consistently good, but not consistent. Not for consistency's sake, I guess.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Um, that's interesting. Yeah, I like I like that. Um, well, so this is opening this is sort of ramping up these dreams of doing this, right? Or this idea, this growing idea. I guess it's not a dream, like I said. It sounds more like you've had a process of development.
Right, yeah,
Each,
yeah.
like with each new thing that you learn, sort of has informed what you're doing. You've absorbed that and taken that into what you're doing and pivoted or just changed what you're doing or expanded what you were doing to include new knowledge, which I think is really great, a great quality to have. But it sounds like you have some guiding principles behind that, because you've mentioned sort of a natural approach to cider making a couple
Right,
times
right,
now.
yes.
So what are some of the, I guess, values or beliefs that inform how you've navigated the process?
Right, that's a good question. Well, one of the things that we've always worked really hard to stick to is to just eliminate waste, and that was foundational in the very beginning because, the apples that we were getting were like waste apples. They
Right.
were destined for the compost, and it's not as if that was the entire reason that we were doing what we were doing. It was very fun and we loved doing it, and so it was like a pleasurable activity, but it was great to keep that stuff out of the even though it's compost and it's not, technically garbage, but it's great to keep that stuff in a different value stream and to actually like add a lot more value to it really. Um
Yeah.
so, part of the story with the cellar is foundational in that, fermentation requires a very strict set of temperature parameters, and a lot of people use a lot of glycol systems, or they're cooling their
Mm,
space, or however you're managing that. There's a lot of energy
right.
going into temperature control. So when we stumbled upon the cellar and kind of realized, and the amazing thing is, it just gets better. Like we are learning how to use it more effectively and like more efficiently when we have all these different temperature zones, because we have like a hallway between the bar and the cellar that we can actually modify even more just by opening the windows so we can make it cooler or warmer. And then we have the bar, which is like at normal 60s temperature, so we have all these zones where we can heat things up and cool things down and move things around. And so the only part of our whole entire let's see, it's like, I don't know how big the whole space is, maybe 3,000 square feet like total, is
Mhm.
the front, the bar. Have to have that, have some temperature control. But we also have a really large wood stove in there that we really actively use all season to like do the primary heat. And then we have mini split systems, which are really good because they're really efficient. They all run on electricity and you can turn them on and off. So we just turn those on for service and then we can turn them off when we go home. And at the time when we started, I was also doing some GCing for the whole building. So I was starting part of the process of like rehabilitating this huge building, which was also really cool and exciting because we removed like all natural gas. Building is 100% electric, and that is like we we didn't really even know what a kind of incredible, difficult feat that was going to be. We just wanted to do it. And the owner was really wonderful about that too. So that was really great to have him on our side and to really be promoting trying to be on renewables and stuff. And even if you can't get the solar panels just for logistical reasons, it's like if you're on electric, that's a good step in the right direction to try to be prepared for the grid, like, all these things. So
Right.
the whole entire birth of the location was about just trying to be like minimize waste and to be low energy, and we talk about that a lot, like low energy. And the really cool thing about cider and wine is that unlike brewing, brewing is like a high energy process. You have to heat a large amount of liquid to boiling and all this stuff. All we do is we press things, and you can actually press it with water, like we're using water pressure. So the only
Yeah.
electricity we're using in the process is the grinder and some pumps, occasionally to transfer, but it's such a low energy uh,
Well, I mean, you
process.
could do it even like just manual, couldn't you, with like an old school
We could beat
press
them
and
with the wooden
the cork.
bats of Spain, yeah.
No, there's that.
We could
I
smash
was
them.
thinking more like an Italian press with like a basket press
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
with the
Yeah,
like the
a
ratchet
friend of ours actually
handle.
has a hydraulic basket press that works really well, actually, yeah.
Oh,
No,
okay.
right.
Well, I was thinking just one where you can, you spin the handle around like you're using leverage and, basic physics to create the pressure and everything.
Right.
Um,
I
so I
mean,
mean,
thinking about it, like most presses are not electric, right? Yeah, they're hydraulic, and it's just great. It's just all of the category of the wines, are just so
yeah,
like they're just so mellow and like low energy, and that's the best. I mean, that's one of the most exciting parts of the process is just how, gentle. It's a very gentle process.
yeah, I love that. Um, so limiting waste, are there other values or things that have
Um,
been guiding North Stars?
Well, uh, I mean, that just goes through everything. Like being local is really important to us. So where we
Yeah.
are in the Hudson Valley are like a massive amount of orchards, right? So we have all these amazing apples. Like, I mean, sometimes we get them from an orchard that's just 15 minutes across the river, and we work with Mead Orchard a lot. That's like 35 minutes away. So we're really able to get most of our fruit from less than an hour away. And that was kind of a goal that we had sort of set for ourselves, but weren't really sure if it was achievable. And we're just finding that it's actually very achievable, which is really exciting. Um, but then the other turning point that happened for us was in 2019. We were working on the tasting room. We were all living in Catskill, and we were going up to the mountains to swim and to try to relax, between like insane work sessions of gutting this. I mean, the place was in extremely bad shape. So we would go up to this lake that everybody goes to, and on the way, as like June turns to July and August, you start like seeing apples.
Mm.
I don't have a background in orcharding and apples, so I didn't like see, how you see mushrooms when you're like tuned into that? You just start seeing mushrooms everywhere.
Yeah, people talk about like morel vision, like
Right.
because you can't see them at first, and then all of a sudden you see your first one, and then you see them everywhere.
Right, exactly. You're locked in. And now I see apple trees like by the bark, and I can just it's the shape. It's like so immediate. I'm just like, that's an apple tree. That's an apple. But like
Yeah,
then like we start seeing like apples, on the side of the roads everywhere, like from the whole kind of drive up this like 35-minute drive from our spot to this lake. And I kind of almost feel like it's like almost a joke, but it's like one day maybe Dave and I are like going up there or something, and we like look at each other with this look, and we're like, should we do it? We're like, yeah, let's do it. And we just pivot the whole plan, the business plan, which was to buy juice from all these local orchards, to like collecting apples, collecting wild apples, knowing that like a few people do this obviously, but so it was 2019, so it was an on year. It was a really good year for apples in our region. And we started like looking around our count. We're in Greene County, and Greene
okay,
County goes from the banks of the Hudson River way up into the Catskill Mountains. So we
Mm.
have a large part of the Catskills in our county, and there's part of this region called the Catskill Park, which is it's not all public land, but a lot of it is like public land. So we decided to just try to collect wild apples, as many as we could, and to process those for cider, and then maybe we would like need to supplement with some orchard fruits later, but to to switch the dynamic of where most of our fruit was coming from to the wild apples. And so that year we didn't have any jobs except for working on this building in the space, so we were able to really dedicate like the whole entire harvest season, and we would just drive up to trees and shake them and collect the apples and bring them back, and then when we had enough we would process them. And yeah, it was really amazing. And so that's kind of how that side
Nice.
of
Yeah.
the business started.
What is the? I mean, what was it about the wild apples that excited you?
Well, first of all, just primarily they're like available.
Yeah, that's always great.
So that's really cool. I mean, the cool thing about apples, and I think about like grapes a lot as I learn more about wine, is that like there are just apples like everywhere. There's so many in certain areas. And I think that what we do is like very repeatable in like so many. I mean, there's so many apples in Vermont, and Maine has a ton of apples, and even like Wisconsin and Illinois have a lot of wild apples. So it's like a cool, repeatable thing, and everybody can make a cool beverage that's unique to their geography and their like region, and we could have all these cool regional ciders. But also, if you've only ever eaten apples from the grocery store or something, it's it's insane what wild apples taste like. They taste they don't taste like apples in that way. They're like screamingly bitter or like horribly sour, or some of them taste like actually they taste like apples, but apples covered in like cinnamon and like cloves or something. Like they have this really thick spice quality. Or
Wild.
a lot of times there's kind of this like apple that I keep sort of encountering all over the place that I feel it just tastes like bananas. I don't know. It's just like, oh,
Mm.
that's the banana vibe. Um, yeah, just
There is a winter banana, isn't there?
there
Like,
is
I
the
mean,
winter
that's the
banana.
name of an apple, right?
That is
Yeah.
yes, that is an apple, and I think one of our spots has one winter banana tree. Yeah, so
Interesting.
we can explore that apple in depth. um, the variety is insane. I mean, there's just like and just like flavor. Like I'm with our what we're maybe because I'm new and I'm just starting on this process. I don't have the skills or like the palate to be super in tune with like delicate, balanced perfection. So we're kind of interested in like big flavor, I would say.
Okay.
And that is what you get when you're dealing with wild apples. You get like a huge range of like extremes, and it's just really cool to like be able to try to figure out how to like blend these and make some kind of coherent beverage when you have like too sour to eat and then too bitter to eat, and you just like have to work that all into something that like functions together and harmonizes.
Right. I mean, it sounds like a really beautiful way to, um, I don't know if capture is the right word, but to serve the bounty of that region that you live in. I mean, it sounds
Yeah,
like
and
just a really,
to try to
yeah,
keep it here and make it be about a place and for the people, and like keep it within the kind of cycle, is really important to us. So sticking to the like mile radius or hour radius and those kinds of ideas. Yeah.
Now, what do you do with your spent pumice?
Oh, oh, that's a funny question because the first year we had met some farmers from way back when we were doing the original market, and they had some pigs, so we took it to the pigs. So we would load up the truck, and I have like a little Toyota,
Uh-huh.
and drive it like 45 minutes to these pigs. So it was just totally crazy inconvenient, like almost nonsense, you know? But since
Right.
we're like in the village, we can't just dump it. So the first year we fed it to some pigs over here. The second year we did the same exact thing with some different pigs over there. And then finally last year we had a really good opportunity to do the processing across the river at like a more functional site, and
Uh-huh.
then we could drive the pomace like straight to the chickens, and the chickens would like do their thing on the scratch pile.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you haven't so I thought the next step in that process was and then we bought pigs.
I wish
And
urban, yeah, we could do urban pigs, right? If you do,
right.
everybody does urban everything. Why not urban pigs?
There may be a reason.
Yeah. We don't have enough
um,
parking spaces as it is, so we would.
um, that's great. Well, so I know you've said a lot of good things about the apples there. I mean, you are pretty proud of those apples, not just the not just the abundance of that of your sort of ecosystem, but you think that these apples are pretty hot.
Yeah, I
And
mean, right. There's two
why
things.
is that? What do you think? What makes that so?
Well, it's interesting it's interesting because there's, like, a hot debate between, I mean, really, like, what, 5 people or something? No, like, a very small an incredibly small amount of people who have very strong opinions on, like, whether wild apples are the best cider apples, or if, like, true cider apples are the best cider apples, and true
Mm,
cider apples most of the time are originally like coming from France and England, where they have a much
mm,
longer cider tradition,
mhm,
and their whole cider, their cider profile is very different. They have these, excuse me, very tannic apples that produce a very different kind of beverage than like American apples ever could, because they're just like wildly different, right?
mm.
Um, so some people think that wild apples aren't the right apples for cider, or maybe aren't the best apples for cider, and that could totally be true because I've worked with the cider apples also, and they legitimately are amazing, the things that they do and add, and it's been an eye-opening experience because, I'm sure you have this experience in wine and the grapes. It's like there is something about like Pinot Noir as a grape, and there is something about um, Cab Franc or whatever kind of variety. It's like there's a reason that they are in the position they are, right? Like they
Right.
do amazing
Yeah.
things. They deserve all the reverence and respect.
Yeah.
But should they be growing like anywhere people can put something in the ground, right? Like should we be kind of like pushing that to try to fit somewhere where maybe it doesn't want to fit?
Well,
And
yeah. I
so I
Great
think
question.
there are like people who are finding new cider varieties and doing an amazing job at like finding new apples here in their own regions that work and make good cider. And I think it's really cool and exciting place to be in cider right now, because so many people are doing that on, and it's not Cornell, it's like people like Redbird Cider and Wildling Cider in Vermont, and Gnarly Pippins, and Scrumpy U, and all these people who have like this super small scale orchards and cideries who are like doing their own trials. And, you know, it takes forever to like see if these things work out. And it's really cool to be starting to be a part of that, and to be trying to find our own apples that will both produce good cider and work in our bioregions and like be resistant to diseases and kind of like thrive where we are, and not have to be forced to grow at the gunpoint of chemicals. um
That's a good way to put it. I always put it as like a crutch.
yeah, yeah,
Or
well,
at gunpoint is it even more evocative.
they
I
are
like
they are forced to grow at gunpoint, yeah.
that.
But the other thing about the apples is like they're totally unsprayed because they're wild, and
Right.
so that, to us, that's also super important. Like when Abe was Abe was born in 2020. That's our son, Anna and my son. And we made like a ton of applesauce for him for in in that harvest year. I think we did it in 2019 also. Um,
Uh-huh.
and it's just like this is amazing. Like this is our child. Like we want to make food for our child that's like wild food, that's like
Yeah.
unsprayed, healthy. I mean, we were talking about like mushroom. Like think of the fungal networks of those trees and all the things that are going on in the soil, and just, I mean, I don't know how
Yeah.
to, macronutrients and all this kind of stuff, and like fully functioning ecosystems. So,
Yeah.
I think that like maybe even if these aren't the best apples, maybe even if we're not making the best cider in the world, like whatever that is,
Right.
then that's okay because I'm happy to work with what I think is like the best fruit in the world, which is like this fruit that's just growing on its own and like thriving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. I mean, it's and you are ingesting that energy and then using it to share with the community. Like that energy is spreading rather than diminishing,
Yes,
which
I
I think is also a really beautiful thing.
I tend to ingest way too much of that energy because pretty much like every every day that we go out, I have a horrible stomach ache by like 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Just a lot of
I will
malic acid
I
in
just
there.
eat so many, and I know every time I know it's wrong and they try to stop me and they're like, "Tim," but I just won't. You have to sample and then
Yeah.
and yeah, it's funny though. They will give you just a horrible stomach ache, but
Oh
you
yeah.
have to eat 40 apples a day. So we'll do
No,
that.
that's
We
same
do
with
that
me. When
for
picking grapes, by the end of the day, I can't even taste wine because I've just bit into so many seeds and skins and, ripe, partially ripe or ripe grapes.
right.
You're just like, yeah, you can't taste it. Your palate is just shot. Like,
Yeah. I mean, one of
um,
the coolest things about your podcast and like me listening to it is there's just it's so stressful. Being in the cellar can be so stressful. There's so much that's always like going wrong and it can be a lot, like, it can be really overwhelming. And then to hear people like Steve Mathiasen say that he is like testing things just by the flavor alone and feeling like you're not insane, that you don't know how to use 40 different like lab processing tools, and that you're like, yes, I can taste. I have a mouth, I have a nose, I can smell, I can taste, like I don't have to send these things away and get reports
hmm.
and like totally not understand all these crazy things that even when I try to understand, I can't really understand. And yeah, it's like, when I hear that kind of thing and what you're saying about tasting the grapes, it's just like, yeah, following your instincts is okay. It's good. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have found. I mean, I'll just only put push you on that in the sense that I mean, I've found it to be helpful. I definitely follow my instincts, but I've I like them to be informed by science and have found myself surprised a couple times. Like, I mean, a real simple sample, like, well, this is probably backing up what you're saying, where we've even taken measurements of sugar content of grapes, and then we've sent it to a lab, and it turned out the alcohol is way higher than what we would have measured, and
Yeah,
it's because they're
yeah, I totally want to do labs. I'm not saying I'm against that for sure. I'm also, like we said earlier, I'm very interested in that stuff too, and that's really cool. I just think like, where we are right now is a small, small, small business. We just can't get that together enough, but that's definitely something that I want to work on in the future. But yeah, I mean, and yeah, isn't that wild how you think something is like that and then you get it back and it's totally different?
Yeah, and I think like if I had just sort of been a little more thoughtful when tasting it, because I wasn't paying attention to that, because I thought I knew, because I had a test,
Right,
a
right.
previous test, and did my calculations. It's like, okay, this is gonna be a nice moderate thing. And then if I'd tasted it, I probably would have been like, you know what? I think I think I got that wrong at the beginning.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's like, that can happen especially with grapes because you get raisins in clusters, depending on where the grapes are from, how they're grown, that kind of stuff. We're using some dry farmed Zinfandel, so it's got a whole range of stuff. And then those raisins aren't going to express any juice, but they're full of sugar. So you don't
Oh,
get, when you
interesting.
take your measurements at the beginning, it's going to be much lower than what actually happens
Oh,
during
wow.
fermentation as they get hydrated and then the sugars get eaten.
Oh, so
um
they're not showing up in the beginning, but then they
exactly,
are
yeah.
gifting
Yeah,
you
because they
this massive
right, right,
okay.
right. Yeah, and I mean, you do stuff like that, like you'll test when the grapes first come in, then you'll wait a day to let you call it soaking up. You let the grapes soak up.
Right,
And then you're almost always going to get a higher sugar content reading the next day, and which we did,
right,
but nowhere near what the reality was. Because
right.
if they're small enough raisins, if they're dry enough raisins, it takes more than a day really for them to get
Interesting.
hydrated and to make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apples
So
will I think they will have more sugar if you sweat them because you're losing water, you're losing moisture, so it is concentrating, but
right,
I don't know what the
right,
real variable I mean, I'm sure it can be pretty extreme.
right, and that's a common practice. Do you guys do that? Sweat your apples, mill?
We do it, our kind of schedule is, like, based more on, how the harvest is going, I guess I would say, so we kind of are we're not, like nothing is optimal the way we do it, so we can't really hold apples for any length of time because we don't have the cold storage and stuff like that, so we just process according to when we get to the right quantity, which is like we have all this weird math and we just want to try to make processing days as productive as possible because it's an incredible amount of work. So
Right.
we'll harvest until we get the right amount of apples, and it's also really locational. So we're starting to move into trying to make things we don't just mix well, first of all, we never mix wild apples and orchard apples. That's like never that's not happening. And
Got it.
we try to keep them in their own like regions. Like sometimes that's even something by road, like this road or that site or something like that, So you go out and you collect, and then sort where your apples are going to end up. And then once you have enough of a certain area, we process that. And they definitely end up sweating for sure because, things just get moved around and time is crazy. And
Yeah, I'm very jealous of the flexibility that you get with apples and pears, and from picking till when you decide. You can sort of. I mean, obviously, you can just sort of set your own schedule. Is the nice thing.
right, that's so
Where-
funny because I was complaining to another cider guy about how I was thinking that the wine people were the lucky ones because you just like bang it out so hard. It's just I was like, "This is crazy. These wine people are complaining, and they're going out there, and they just do, like, one super gnarly day, and then you have to, like." And he's gave me a massive scolding,
Yeah, totally.
and he was
As you
like,
deserve.
"No, you don't know anything. They work so much harder." And I was like, "We are doing this for months, and it's so grueling, and it feels like it's never gonna end, and by the end, you're just dying." Um, yeah, he had a different opinion, which was interesting coming. He's in Apple, so I guess he's probably right. Right.
Good. Glad to hear
Yeah,
that.
because you guys have
Yeah, no,
a
it's
time. You're like, this is the day. This is it, and we can be like, it's raining. I'm not doing it today.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, rain is a whole thing with grapes too, where that will instantly affect, the quality of the wine,
Right.
if it's going to rain. So you either have to, you have to make a decision. Do we pick immediately before, or do we wait for a while and sort of roll the dice and hope we get some dry weather after to dry them back out?
Right. Well, maybe
And
you should
then
pick a more robust fruit.
yeah. Hey,
Yeah,
I like that idea. Um,
that's my gauntlet.
I definitely am leaning in that direction.
Yeah.
I just was checking out some prickly pear yesterday,
Yeah, I was gonna
which
say that's not gonna
looking
go south on you if you wait a couple days.
not at all. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, no, it's fun. I I won't, I love that you have sort of talked about how, if you were trying to think about farming regeneratively, like your wild apples sort of have everything that you'd want. They're like no till, they're biodiverse, like,
Oh yeah, it's so crazy. I mean,
rich soils,
yeah,
they actually are a grazing based form of pomiculture, with
yeah,
deer grazing the understory, and
yeah,
no sprays, no intervention, just really like I, I I say all that as a joke, but I think, my vision for where I want wine and cider to go is like that idea of like, rather than like what you said, where we're clearing land to plant 5 varieties of grapes that actually aren't from that land,
right,
to instead listen to the land and look at the land and say what is doing well here before I even got here, before I even imposed my ego on it, and how can I help that do even better and make something from that. Like it's just a whole different vision for wine, I think.
yeah.
And yeah, and I think what you're doing with cider is that, which is, I think, what I love about cider these days is there's, you're not alone in doing that. And I think it's a really beautiful way to approach any kind of thing that we're doing, a fermented beverage, kind of creation, cultural product.
It's
um,
such an exciting time to be doing this stuff because I'm sure it's the same in wine. There's so many people who are I hear you guys talking about hybrids a lot and people doing native
yeah,
grapes, and it's so cool that people are like expanding the idea of like taste and what is good or what is the best into something that's like what works, what can function, what is like exciting and different, and not just like trying to make the best whatever they can make,
yeah.
make something that works and is like in league with all that.
Right, and then the the best will come. It just takes time, and we need to
Right,
get that started because I mean, I was just thinking, I was like, and look, that means great. Maybe we're not going to be planting Cabernet and Pinot Noir anymore here in North America. I mean, that would be my suggestion.
right,
But look, we can still get beautiful examples of them from where they came from.
right.
We just have to import them from Europe. But I was like, my second thought was, I mean, France is like in the middle of another like 40-degree Fahrenheit, like over 100
Oh, I
degrees.
saw that. I
I mean,
saw
not
that.
40-degree
Oh,
Fahrenheit, over 100-degree Fahrenheit day,
man, yeah,
heat spell. And I mean, there might come a time where they're not even able to make the wine
yeah,
where they are. And so I think the sooner we start this decades long, 100-year, generations long process of finding what actually, finding new things that do well here, like the better, because
right.
like, yeah, like nothing's going to do well pretty soon. And we need those things if we want to be drinking the same quality.
If we act
Um,
like there is a peak expression of some kind of wine or something, and that is an unchanging ideal, it's just a total denial of everything that's changing all around us, like faster than we can even keep up
mm,
with it. So we have to
yeah.
change our tastes and our palates and our acceptance of what the best thing is all the time. And that's,
Yeah, embrace diversity
yeah.
and and change in ourselves. Yeah, yeah. Well said. I I don't know if that's a good place to end, but did you have anything else that you wanted to say about where you guys are headed and what's next for your cidery?
Well, I think
Do you have a
something that
name change coming?
oh, yeah, that no, I'm gonna hold back on that for now because,
Okay. All right.
I
All right.
just yeah, we haven't discussed internal memos have not been
Okay. Great.
approved or
All
anything
right.
yet.
So,
There may be,
well,
but
where can
yeah.
people find out about you,
Right, that's what I
and
was going for.
yeah.
Something that we're really proud of and that we try to do, like I said, is like we're really focused on trying to keep everything local. And we have this really nice tasting room where we have all of our ciders and like stuff that we would never be able to release normally. And that's available on draft. We have like a really good draft cider selection, along with other New
Nice.
York State wines, beers, and spirits. But, we're kind of like thinking about doing a little bit of maybe mail order or something like that, but like our heart is in our tasting room, and it's really exciting to I I kind of had this thought like, oh, we have to reserve the best stuff and bottle it, and that way like people who care the most, we can like get it to them or something. And now I've totally
Okay.
changed that. I'm like, we're gonna keg the best stuff and we're gonna serve it to our customers who like live here and come here, and they're gonna get to taste like a single Roxbury russet tree that we found that's like 120 years old, and that's going to be for them, just the people who like come here to hang out and drink cider. And that actually is making a lot more sense now than trying to hoard it and like get it out there or whatever. So
I love that.
it's definitely like my creation of the space and everything was always this idea to like have a very special place where people could come and taste the very best things, and they definitely present as their best selves in that medium. Like maybe there's something about the volume of kegs that like works in aging or something like that, you know, but definitely like coming to the space is how we would want to show ourselves. That's like our best foot forward, I'd say. So,
Nice.
you know, it's very close to New York City, so there's a huge audience, and then we just have our community who like we love and really supports us, and that's good enough.
Do you have a website?
Yeah, leftbankciders.com. Most of
Ciders
our
with an S?
Yes, Ciders with an S.
Got
And
it.
most of our stuff is like on our Instagram. That's our like quick, you know, that's our way to get information out quickly is Instagram. So
And that's at Left Bank Ciders?
yes, exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Tim. This
Thank
has been
you. That
really
was
great.
really fun. I hope it's not too crazy. I just think I wanted to say our slogan is amateur cider making at a professional scale. Yeah,
That's great.
and we're okay with that. Yeah.
Someday you'll probably have to change that.
It's not trademarked yet, but I'm going to work on it.
No, I mean, but you'll probably not be able to regard yourself as an amateur before too long.
It's really this, it's another thing that's so cool about this community and everybody, and cider more than wine is that, like people don't know what it's supposed to taste like. And that is kind of a huge advantage. And it's
Yeah.
nice to be able to grow, to be both like functional and out in the world, and also to plant like when I when I freak out about some flaws or something's going wrong or we have a lot of bread or whatever, it's like it's a process. It takes years. I'm like dedicating myself to this. This is what I want to do. This is what we're going to do for the rest of our lives. So it doesn't have to be perfect all the time, and we will learn and we will get better. And the next vintage will be better and better and better. So yeah.
That is a great motto as well. Thanks, Tim. Really great talking to you.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. That was really fun.
Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. And if you did, please do leave a review for the Organic Wine Podcast. It helps a lot, and we want to get the word out to as many people as we can, which your review will help do. Thanks so much.